Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to this astrology report, kind of changing it up a little bit. Schedule seems to be all over the place these days. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a really grounding and illuminating solstice, whatever you chose to, however you chose to honor it and to celebrate it, or not, right? That is up to you entirely. But whether you choose to revere, honor, or acknowledge the movement of our planet around the sun, if you even at this point even acknowledge that that is what's going on, there are so many variables to reality right now. It's truly hard to keep anything straight. And of course, the fog of war is so thick right now with Neptune and Pisces moving direct that it's not surprising at all. So normally on this channel, we'd be doing the daily medicine. We'd be doing an intuitive reading as part of the transmission and looking at the astrology for the day. And of course, that's still going to happen in terms of the astrology. But I thought it would be really important to go over the solstice, maybe look a little bit at the events leading up to the solstice, right, from our full moon that happened on the 18th, right? The 18th, I believe. Yes, the 18th, very late in the evening, early morning on the 19th, depending on where you are on the planet, and what transpired since then, because we've had some pretty significant changes since that full moon. Astrologically, and I'm sure out in real life as well. So we're going to go over the solstice point. We're going to kind of do a little bit of retrospective on the changes, because they're going to be integral into, in terms of how this season unfolds. So welcome. Thanks for being here. I've missed being live, and it's good to see everyone, regardless if you're here live or if you're catching this on the replay on YouTube or BitChute or Odysee. So you can stick around here at the end of the video to get more information, to figure out how to book a personal reading if that interests you, and certainly how to support this work, because there are going to be some changes coming, of course, with everybody. There's no, we're all kind of going through it together, but I'm going to be making some changes to these platforms as well, and the format of how I'm doing things. But that's for later. Let's just take some time here to go over the astrology. So one thing I'd like to bring up, first of all, is that, the concept of the solstice is applicable to the entire planet, and so it's not just the winter solstice for this entire planet. There's an entire half of the planet is going into their summer solstice. The sun is still in the same position relative to the Earth, which is in Capricorn now, but the southern hemisphere of the planet is going into a different season. So I just really feel like it's important to acknowledge that, because we tend to, especially if you're practicing tropical or Western astrology, there is a tendency to only apply the symbolism of these major seasonal changes to our hemisphere as if the rest of the world doesn't exist. So I really am hesitant to use, and I probably already did out of habit, the term winter solstice. I prefer December solstice. And March equinox. And we're going to look at some of the major themes leading from the December solstice to the March equinox. And a lot of this was covered in the eclipse readings and the reports for the eclipse too, but then we'll look at it at more of a condensed version, and maybe every time we go back over these transits, every single time, it's not like things haven't changed on a consistent basis, right? We live in a dynamic and very fluid reality here that is always changing as a result of our input into it, and so it's always useful to go back and revisit these things, even though we've reported on it, months ago with the eclipse season. And boy, it's been gnarly. So this report also, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Chiron, I think, because, this report specifically is for those of us who, are feeling it very deeply. There's been a very deep inventory going on, and certainly I'm no exception. And I think Chiron moving direct is a big part of this. And I don't know if anybody, how much other people are talking about this, especially in conjunction with the fact that Venus stationed retrograde at the very same time, right after this full moon with the sun at the galactic center. Speaking of the sun, my gosh, it has woken up, that is for sure. There are so many sunspots now on the sun, to the point where I think it's actually rivaling the last solar maximum 11 years ago with the amount I think there's 10 sunspots active right now. And, just as I had anticipated, we got two pretty large M-class solar flares right around the time of the full moon. So the sun is in conjunction with the center of the galaxy, and then we get two massive solar flares that come. And I don't know about you, but the consistent solar activity is really disrupting a lot of my sleep pattern, and it's been very unsettled. And I know that light coming from anywhere is information. And so it's important that we don't squash our feelings. And if you're feeling very deeply into your life and taking that inventory, and you have a deep sense of anything really that is not in line with, the standard narrative of not struggling. That's what I wanted to bring up, the concept of struggling when it comes to your mental and emotional health. This report's really meant for those of us, because there's a tendency to say I'm struggling, right? And as if that's like a negative state, or that is something that we should aspire never to do, is to struggle, right? Or that we should do whatever we can to soothe ourselves out of that feeling. And I would like to offer an alternative perspective here, which is that not that we have to suffer necessarily in order to learn, but the struggle is where we work things out in our minds and in our hearts and in our spirit. And when people, myself included, right, this is a pretty recent revelation, at least to me, is that when we say we're struggling, it denotes some sort of negative state that we want to get out of, when in fact our feelings are in dissonance with what we maybe are experiencing, what we're observing, what we have previously adhered to in terms of a perspective or reality. And when they come into dissonance, this is where the struggle is. And many people, rather than sitting in the struggle and really taking inventory of what it's all about, will do many different things in order to assuage that struggle, because it's very, very uncomfortable. And now that Chiron is direct, I assure you that the internalized process of the wounded healer and the traumatized inner child is now going to start being externalized. It's going to be reflected back to us. It's not going to be as much of an internalized experience anymore, which is in some ways maybe allows us to release it and not to hold it so much within. But at the same time, this is where we are really going to be tested in our ability to hold our gaze on the potential of who we can be, and that is embedded as our birthright as just a living being on this planet and in this universe and in life. So if you are struggling, it's okay. And just think about how the pharmaceutical industry has, made billions upon billions on pharmaceuticals that assist people with the struggle, right? And there's no shortage of so-called spiritual remedies that do the same, rather than really working with the struggle, working through the struggle, identifying the feelings, being able to not necessarily compartmentalize, but be able to be the observer and the witness of the struggle, and use your feelings as a signpost, a hash mark, right? Like there's a reason that you feel this way. And yes, sometimes you may discover that the reason that you're struggling is because you are bombarded with signals from outside of you that are giving you images, giving you data, giving you input constantly, so that there is dissonance all of the time. And that struggle may be coming from there. You may find that, you having spiritual struggle. You may have entity attachments that have been there for generations that are such an old and familiar pattern of mental and emotional health that you don't even realize that there has been an entity attached to your family lineage for like 6 generations. That's something that you would work on too. I'm not suggesting that it has to stay there. Not at all, right? We all deserve to be free and sovereign, and we want to release these attachments, right? But the struggle in and of itself is what is telling us that there's something out of balance. But sometimes, sometimes we erroneously think that just kind of reorienting our mind to positivity is somehow solving the struggle or leading us to a deeper state of wisdom. And I just don't think that that is necessarily true. And so this report and my work specifically is for those who are not afraid to face the struggle head on, to feel it out, to understand it, not to feed it and to continue to degrade yourself as a result of it, but to be, I mean, there's just a lot of delusion that can come out, a lot of spiritual practices that will keep you from actually having authentic, raw, and direct experience of the Great Spirit, right? And sometimes that means just feeling some things, feeling some really intense and heavy things, right? And I'm certainly no different, and I think that's probably why I feel so called right now to really speak to this, and especially because Chiron is direct now, and Chiron's going to be a big player, not only Christmas Day in the United States, where Mars meets Antares, and trine is in a trine to a direct Chiron. And if you haven't been feeling this Saturn-Uranus square already, I don't know what to say, because it is so potent, and it's just providing so much struggle in and of itself that it's going to be exact on Christmas Eve. So, and that means that the other side of it is still going to be relevant for a number of days or so after. But we have Chiron that's going to be in a trine to Mars, now in Sagittarius, and all through the winter, right, where we have the sun's going to square Chiron. We have, then Mars is going to come into a square with Chiron when Mars is in Capricorn. Mercury is now in Capricorn and is going to enter Aquarius this season and station retrograde there. So, I mean, things will start to break loose. Again, I've said this many times, in February. That's when they're going to start breaking loose. And maybe by the end of January, we'll start to get a sense of what that's going to feel like. But remember, if we are in the northern hemisphere, let's just take this for what it is for a minute. And we're going into winter solstice. Yeah, the sun is now in Capricorn. Yes, we're acknowledging that the light is coming back and the sun is coming back. But this is the beginning of the winter. And it's time to start hibernating. And so if you're feeling that way, and you're feeling like you want to consolidate and that you want to consolidate not your power, but conserve, right? And you find your power. The thing is that we're finding our power in some sort of social institution and, political institutions, economies, governments, all of these Capricornian aspects, the very nature of our reality. When Venus is retrograde in Capricorn, Pluto has been just doing Pluto's thing this whole time. Like, where are we finding our power? And I think that this is where people are really finding themselves kind of like loose and wondering what's happening, or just there's seems to be a trend now. We talked about this, the trifurcation, and this has gotten brought up in other ways as well that I've posted, at least on my social media, from who was it, Magenta Pixie, right? Take it with a grain of salt. Take it all with a grain of salt. Every single thing, every single piece of information that comes across your awareness should be filtered through your filter and come out of it and come out from that with some higher and more sharp awareness. But there's this sense here that we have to start focusing on where we're going. And I do agree with that. But there also is all these pesky astrological transits that really need to be addressed and really acknowledged and honored for what they are, even when they're difficult. And I really do push back a lot on this idea that we need to, not allow ourselves to go into some sort of negative. You certainly don't want to go into a negative tailspin. I totally agree with that, and I'm not interested in doing that either. But I also realize that there is something so deep and important about how we feel. And so if you are feeling it and you're just all over the place, or you are getting more thoughtful, maybe you're consolidating and shutting yourself out of certain social media aspects. Maybe you are literally going into some sort of hibernation, right? Consolidating your power. So, and I think when we had the solstice, the moon was in Cancer, right? And we talked about this last week with the Chariot card coming out as our impact or as our effect, and the need to have some sort of armor or protection as we go forward. It's important. So I know that this is kind of a rambly opening to this, but these are things that I've been, that it's pretty clear that I need to speak to. So we'll just get into the astrology because I don't have much else to offer. I'm going to check in with the chat real quick and see. Struggle Street slapped in the face in my dream state, and this morning I sat in the struggle all morning, journaled, and made notes on healing what came up, and reorienting absolutely isn't an option anymore. Gotta heal to grow. I totally agree with that. I think that that's a really, really, really astute observation and perspective, is that we continue to want to reorient our perspective in order to feel better, right? And we will search out any measure of information that is going to confirm that bias so that we can feel better, right? And we have to heal. This was a big part of the full moon, is what is it that has been holding us each back in our minds and in terms of what we think and our perspective, that absolutely is holding us down, is an unbearable pressure, and all we have to do is release it. So, but the real challenge here with Chiron now direct and Venus in retrograde, that's the other thing. Like, I can't speak to anybody else. I'll tell you that Venus transits, I have them in my body, right? And part of that is, Venus rules my 4th house, Venus rules my 9th house, but specifically my 4th house. So it's deep inner experiences, but also too, in my actual body, in my physical nature. And so with Venus now stationing retrograde in my 12th house, it's just, oh my gosh, these are interesting times, and the struggle is very real. And so if you are struggling, it's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with you, right? I've had enough people now reach out to me and just be like, one person said, if I'm supposed to be raising my vibration, this isn't for me. And I realized how much of a trap that really is for people, right? That there's something wrong with them because they can't raise their vibration, which is a misnomer in and of itself, right? You don't raise your vibration. You resonate with the vibration that represents your connection with the Great Spirit and Source, right? Whatever that is. You don't raise it. it's such a trap. And I know people don't want to hear this. And I know it goes against everything that a lot of people in the New Age and spiritual communities have been taught. But we have to be real with ourselves. And I feel for everybody, really. And you know how the holidays are. I mean, it's just, it's already a struggle, and people are already feeling so low. And I'm not suggesting that we should just wallow in that. I'm suggesting that it's usually when people are trying to get you to feel something different than you naturally feel that people really start to push back, or they go deeper, right? Because nobody understands them, because they're like, oh, you just have to change your frequency. And it's like, wow. Thanks for meeting me where I'm at. So anyway, let's get into the astrology, because I think that'll help ground us into what's going on. So let's see here. I'm going to bring up, now, like I said, lots of solar, 2 M-class solar flares right around the full moon. That was anticipated. Now the sun is very awake and has a considerable amount of sunspots that are active right now. I can even show you real quick, actually, if you want to look here, right? 10 sunspots at spaceweather.com. This is the one that's run, this is the website that's run basically by NASA, or I'm pretty sure, not directly by NASA, but by an individual who is more oriented towards the mainstream. And then spaceweathernews.com is run by the folks at Suspicious Observers, so you can always check that out as well. But yeah, 10 sunspots. I mean, it's not going away anytime soon. And if you've been tracking earthquakes, there were a ton of earthquakes last night into this morning in the U.S., like Oklahoma and Texas and Alabama and Idaho. And then there were a ton in California, Northern California. So eyes on there for sure. Things are moving. Oh my gosh, there's so many changes that we need to talk about. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. We might not go through the whole process of the winter solstice, I just did it, the December solstice up to the equinox, but we'll definitely be looking at the major themes moving ahead. So even if it's just to acknowledge, like, this is where things are. So our moon is in Leo right now. It was in Cancer. It moved into Leo yesterday after the solstice point. And there are a couple other things in terms of the asteroids. The big one, if we move over to this chart, actually, I'll show you, is that asteroid Ceres is now moved into Taurus. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. I've been sitting at Alcyon and now is officially in Taurus. So not only are we, the goddess of the grain in agriculture is in the sign of fixed earth, it's also in conjunction with the Pleiades. So, and is retrograde, right? So that means that once this asteroid passes this point, stations direct, it will come back over this point. This is something to really pay attention to, right? Because this is the representation of, what sustains us in real time here. Agriculture, the seasonal cycle. For her to move, for this asteroid to move now into Taurus with all of this other Earth stuff going on, especially, look at the stack up in Capricorn right now. The sun is at 0 degrees, almost to 1 degree. We have Juno, we have Mercury. They're both conjunct today. We'll get into that for sure. The ascendant is based on my location and time right now, so you don't have to necessarily pay attention to that. But also, too, we have Pluto and we have Venus retrograde, all stacked up in Capricorn right now. So there is all these interesting overlays and timestamps that we're going to be talking about over the next 3 months. This is a very pivotal time, very pivotal, because we're soon going to come into the Pleiadian revival. That also is going to take us out till about the next eclipse season, so end of April into May, when the nodes of the moon shift out of the Pleiades, right? They will move beyond the Pleiades at that point. So this whole time frame really leading up to certainly the equinox and then into the end and beginning of the next eclipse cycle is very formative, and it's very important. I'm going to do a whole report about the Pleiadian revival in particular, because we're going to see it. in my forecasting, and what I've been learning about our economy as a magical spell that really finds its traction in the realm of Scorpio, by the way, when the nodes shift, our economy is going to start really changing, right? And we're going to have to accept that we're being pulled, whether we like it or not, in a direction for our own evolution that has to do with being in tune with what is, rather than harnessing the power of our collective. And now I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that or there's no power in that, but there's going to be a shift in our economy when these nodes change, and it's going to be the case probably, I would say, throughout the duration of the nodal axis in Taurus and Scorpio, which is about 18 months, right? The nodes of the moon stay in a sign for about a year and a half. So we're coming to the end of the mind and the higher mind, and we are soon to embark on full-on experience, and very feminine, right? Earth and water, and you're talking about fixed energy, so they're not going to move very easily either. So we'll be talking about that, but in a separate video. But I just want to show you how important it is that Ceres, the goddess of the agriculture, of grain, of sustainment and nourishment, has moved into Taurus right now and is in conjunction with the Pleiades. So it's really starting to give us opportunities to align with this. And part of this is well, I'm going to save that for later. Anyway, so I just wanted to show you that. We'll go back to the chart that from Planet Watcher that allows us to move. Come on. There we go. Allows us to move a lot easier. So, yeah. And I was wondering how you feel about the lighting. I got Taurus people give the best presents, and I got a ring light for Christmas from Seth, and I think it'll be a lot better once I get an actual webcam, as opposed to the webcam that's embedded in this dinosaur of a laptop. Great for processing and storage, but not the best camera. So when I get a new webcam, it's gonna be so awesome. It's going to look so much better and professional, and I'm excited. So anyway, let's get into it. I feel like I haven't seen you guys in a while, because I haven't. It's been a number of days since I've been on here, so I feel like I need to catch up in life. So the moon is in Leo now, and there's a strong feeling of needing to actualize ourselves, to express ourselves, our unique and authentic selves, perhaps to find, feeling very devotional to something, to release our passions. This is a strong urge to just be ourselves and and that's how we feel, right? We may not necessarily express it outright. That's more of where the sun is, right? Which is about power in Capricorn right now. But the moon is making some interesting connections today. You can see right here that there is a fire trine, a grand trine that's happening with Mars and the moon in Leo, and a now direct Chiron. So that's important. We'll be talking about that. And then, of course, as the moon moves on today, you're going to see that there's a T-square, because the moon comes into opposition with Saturn, and as part of the square to Uranus. And so this is important too, because part of this season, Mercury is going to move into Aquarius and station retrograde right where Saturn is right now. So keep that in mind, that Saturn is like this anchor that we can't really do anything about. It's like the sword in the stone. Nobody's going to pull it out. This is in fact the boundary of structure and authority that is still sitting in a position right now in Aquarius that is, there's no way around the fact that the real inspiration that we're looking for is only going to come from within. And the square with Uranus that keeps building and will be exact on the 24th, very early in the morning on the 24th, I believe, is, really going to challenge us, because the all of the potentials of what we could be, what we could have, what we value and our ambitions, it just there's endless possibilities. And there's something profoundly trickster-like about this with Uranus, especially in its retrograde. We're all kind of going through this consistent glitching of what we want, what we are drawn to have, what can we have, what is made available to us in our material environment and our resources that we can have. And right now, there is a very distinct glitching in and out of all of the perspectives or all of the options, right? It's like window shopping reality. And when Uranus does station direct, which will be in January, this type of experience is going to be much more, externalized. Let's put it that way. We're going to see, we may be feeling it within us right now when Uranus stations direct, as we'll look at. It will be much more about this is when, you can start to see, I would say, this is when we'll start to really experience, once Uranus starts moving direct in Taurus, we'll start to really experience the outward disruptions, the outward potentially innovation. Absolutely. Uranus is innovation, thinking outside of the box. There's a lot of possibility here as we move forward. But what we have, this Saturn Square with Uranus that is on just before then Mars comes into a trine with Chiron in conjunction with Antares, is really going to test our ability to stay firm in the concept that we're all going together, right? We're all on the stairway up, and we're all graduating upwards, and everybody's on their own step throughout this whole process. Yet we are still experiencing this variability and this consistent reorientation within ourselves of what we could have, what is available to us to have. Like, it's really kind of the idea of window shopping is inspiring you to see, oh, look at what everything is out there to have. So as we are enticed, even within ourselves, right? That's the thing about Uranus. It is this ultimate trickster energy. The thing about Uranus is that it will show us whatever we want, right? And even if it is varied and maybe it's futuristic, maybe it is innovative, maybe it is just something that is just constantly changing with Uranus, it's going to test our ability to accept the very real and very karmic presence of Saturn, but also too that we're all getting to we're all exactly where we need to be. And I think this can be very frustrating when you are kind of in family mode, right? Or you are attempting to come together. And this T-square with the opposition of the Leo moon is really going to give us a lot of insight into that. So I'm going to start with the transits of the moon for today. And I'm not trying to gloss over in any way what the December solstice represents, because it does represent power. That's what 0 degrees of Capricorn is. It's the zenith. It's the top of the chart. It's power. Power, 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 right? But it's the power of the collective that is able to sustain and protect us as we go into a time of year where, at least in the northern hemisphere, there ain't much going on. It's beginning of winter. Now for the southern hemisphere, it's a different kind of power, because now it's an indication that their light cycle, their seasonal cycle, is going to start waning. And there is a different type of power that is relevant to people in the southern hemisphere as their light is starting to slowly but surely diminish over the next 6 months, and they're going into their yin phase. So regardless of where you're at, yin or yang, there is this expression and really finding our sustainment through the power of the collective or the geometric unfolding of reality. When we have, like I said, Venus retrograde, we have Pluto right here. It's what is that? What is that? And we see already that it's in a quincunx with Rahu immediately, right? Because we identify what it means to take power. We identify what it means to step into a position of power. And we also identify the contrast to that, which is there's always the potential that you use your power and waste the resources of the group in order to keep your power. And, this doesn't fit at all with where the North Node is taking us, which is way more in receiving mode, right? To be open and to await what is being brought to our awareness as a result of our expedition, right, into the collective unconscious, into our own psyche in some ways. And so, anyway, you can tell that I'm struggling, and I'm not shying away from the struggling. I'm just like many people right now. I'm in very deep inventory mode, and letting it guide me in the right direction, as opposed to trying to find my way, as Emily said, to reorient myself so that I don't feel the struggle. It's just time that we start dealing with this healing now that Chiron is direct. There's just no way around it. And part of that is Saturn, right? Saturn is like, there's no way around any of this, right? This is the framework of reality as we experience it in our physical form and in time and space. And part of that is the acceptance that real inspiration will come from within, and requires that we are able to acknowledge the collective as a whole and the fact that it has its own energy. So this moon opposition, well, let's go back here first. We talked about Ceres is now in Taurus and is in conjunction with the Pleiades. This is the 21st. Hold on. Not that we can't talk about that, but there's been a lot to say about that. So we're at the 22nd. Here we go. So the first thing is that the moon was in a trine to Mars. And Mars in Sagittarius, we've talked about this already, is really ready, the power and the meaning of the power and the depth of our feeling in our relationships is really characterized by Sagittarius in the 9th house. And so with the moon in Leo, making this fire trine here to Mars that is really being stirred, very much so. Very stirred by something that is like an emotional rebirth, right? A stirring up of individual longings. It's like Cupid knocking at the door of your heart. It's like, hey, I want in. And of course, and there's an allurement here, right, of whatever this represents. Now, a lot of times when you have, and I'm not getting into the specifics of Cupid and who Cupid is. I mean, my God, we could just spend the rest of our lives decoding all of the symbolism that has been shoved down our throats for how many centuries. And I'm not saying that that's not important, but it also in some ways just like reinforces the energetics of those symbols the more we focus on them. So, but it's good to at least understand it. But that's a different conversation. You want to look into Cupid's origins, you go right ahead. What I'm suggesting here is that there is almost a sense of not being in control once that happens, right? The idea is that you get shot with Cupid's arrow and you're under a spell. You're no longer really in control, or it's what's not in control anymore is your rationality and a sense of social respectability, and you will go for the thing that you were looking at when you got shot with the arrow, no matter what, right? There's an allurement here and a very strong stirring. Now, the upside to this is an incredible emotional rebirth of like, oh, I didn't realize I could feel that way anymore. Or something stirs your heart so much that you're like, no matter what. So there's a definite benefit here, and Mars will just go for it, right? Mars doesn't even think. Mars just acts on our own and on actualization, on the potency of the desire that Mars has to just be and to act on one's own interest. This is part of understanding the ego as a necessary beginning point, right? There's no plant without a seed. So to be like, you just suppress your ego is like, hey, here, go ahead and grow this plant, but don't ever plant a seed. Now, I know that you can clone plants, but we're not getting into that. And if you've ever been in the industry, you know that plants from seed are way hardier and way more capable of dealing with pests and not succumbing to all kinds of diseases. The more you clone plants, even if they have great genetics, the more you are messing with their natural ability to interface with the environment successfully. Anyway, so Mars comes into this trine with the moon in Leo, and there's something very deep and permanent within us with this trine that we giving ourselves the opportunity to feel with this trine, not us. It's being, the template is being provided for us with this fire trine. And there is a power of basic spiritual values, right, which refer to our common humanity, right, and this permanence that is beyond our own cycle, right? We come into this world as a material being, we live our life, and then we go back, right? And we go through the cycle, and that is happening over and over and over again. But there's something very permanent about these much larger cycles that seem like they don't change. Of course, they all change, but it's that permanence of basic spiritual values and the common humanity that we can really be stirred by. And this trine with Mars really allows our emotions and our feelings and our internal landscape to get some real courage and to feel very much in charge of the expression of that, if that makes sense, right? There is the moon is our ability, shows how we adapt to the world around us, and also reflects our internal feeling landscape. And if we have been able to feel into the common humanity and the permanence of that and how it endures regardless of culture and institutions and governments and historical periods even, and even planetary cycles. There's something very permanent about that, and it can really stir Mars to find, to fall back in love with humanity, and to fall back in love basically with ourselves as humanity and what we're here to do. I think this was actually a really important trine. And then it comes into trine with Chiron, and there is this fire trine you can see right here. So Chiron is now direct, as we've talked about a bunch now. And again, this goes back to using our individual sovereign nature that we feel within ourselves to really keep ourselves focused on the potency of who we can become. And there's something about involving our vital energies in this creative act that if we're able to do that successfully and to produce like a new or significant or beautiful new form, kind of like blowing glass, again, this will allow for us to be involved in the process of shaping ourselves, right? Again, Chiron keeps pulling, and it's just going to get more so. Chiron is pulling us into old identities, old patterns, old ways of feeling about ourselves and our wounds, and drawing our attention back to the wounded inner child. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't acknowledge that. That was like my whole diatribe at the beginning. We shouldn't be pushing that away. In fact, we are being primed at the moment to be actively involved with our own feelings and using our own spiritual and vital energies to shape ourselves however we want to do it. But it requires that we actually can see in its entirety the highest potential of who we can become, and not the overlay of all of the inner child wounding, the wounded healer, all of the Chiron aspects. And so this fire trine that also has Mars invested is just, it's the extra oomph behind it of falling back in love with ourselves, right? And in a way that has us really feeling this yearning to be back involved. And just talking about it is really, at least for me, really helping for me to want to get back involved, because I definitely have not been feeling that way. So this is a really important fire trine that's going on with our Leo moon. So as we move through the day, and there's some very important transits that are not moon related that I will get into. But here is our opposition and the T-square, right? So here's our opposition with Saturn, as I talked about. So Saturn can be like this huge oak tree that has been on your, on your land for generations, and there is a rope swing or a tire swing or something to that effect that's there, and generations of children in your family, for instance, this is just an example, have been playing on that swing. And we're feeling kind of like, there is a vacillation, right? And there's a sense of like being on this swing and kind of wildly like going up. And so it's a real thrill, and then it's really scary. And then maybe you get sick because somebody spun you really fast, all of these things. But what is actually allowing for that to happen, strangely enough, is the opposition to Saturn. Saturn is the oak tree. Saturn is that stable force of the authority that manages material reality, of time, of space, and is able to hold that tire swing of our own feelings. And so it goes all over the place. And I think a lot of us are feeling that, and it's just becoming more obvious with this T-square, because it's so involved with Saturn and Uranus right now that, what is a T-square? The square point over here, this pinnacle, is what is drawing the energy over here. Again, so when you're feeling this kind of like tension, and it's not even tension, but there is tension, right? You have the tree and you have the swing that's tied to the tree, and you may be flying all over the place being on that swing, but it's the tree that's holding the swing so you don't go flying off into the distance. And, it is bright, and it is powerful, and it is dynamic with this position of the moon in Leo. And it's something about this square now that is really harnessing the energy of this. And again, it's like all of the things that we could become, all of the things we can have. It's not even about who we can become, because you have to remember that Taurus is about the material world, fixed earth, right? It is what it is. When you touch things, when you touch your own body, right? When you ascribe value to the things around you, those are all Taurus types of traits. So when the moon comes into a square today with Uranus retrograde, this square is where we want, there is a real drive to just gather some sort of social maturity, right? Part of Leo is like party time. The Leo person is, certainly the center of attention a lot of times, especially if you have really strong Leo in your chart and you go into a group of people and you tend to be kind of like the center point, or just the shining one. But this also too, there's a sense of just wanting to be oneself, and to be oneself amongst your peers, which is very much about the Aquarian energy. So, and which is where Saturn is right now. So the square here with Uranus is, we keep having to living through this disruption. It's certainly in terms of what we ascribe value to individually and internally. We keep going through this upheaval and disruption, and oh, it could be this way. Oh, I could have that. Oh, I could have that. Oh, that's really cool. In terms of what's valuable to us, right? You may window shop through a part of, some shopping district, and you're like, I don't want any of that crap. Like, that's not me at all. And that might be an experience that you're having too. But there's something here that we just want to be. We just want to be ourselves, and we just want to be ourselves in an environment where other people are being themselves. And it can be very difficult to really just kind of sink into that feeling at the same time that the very nature of the physical reality that we ascribe value to is changing, and our values are changing. They're changing all the time in relation to what's going on outside of us, and that's not an accident. This is a really big part of why of Uranus being in its retrograde, and we have to be very careful about what we are seeing here. Again, you're a trickster. I mean, you get shown things for some reason that maybe has to do with a larger learning experience, but there's something wanting to just be and to gather the social maturity to just feel like ourselves in the midst of other people feeling like ourselves. But when our values constantly under the impact of change over and over and over again, it can feel, there's tension there. There's definitely tension there. But the other part of that too is the T-square. Is there's something about where Uranus is that is going to harness the energy of the opposition with the moon and Saturn, because our feelings are one thing, and then dad comes and puts his foot down, which is the Saturn energy, and is just like, no, that's not happening. So I think there is something very important about leaning into or not attaching ourselves to what versions of reality or what it is that our ambition is leading us towards. I think that it's really important that we're not making decisions about it right now. It's very tempting. It's really, really tempting but it's changing. It changes like 5 times a day at least. Every time you come into contact with a new piece of information or talk to a different person or just have a feeling, for God's sakes, it's changing. And there's something actually very valuable about that. And the tension with Saturn, I know it's going to be hard. It's already so hard, but boy, oh boy, the struggle is absolutely embodied in this square. And if you can successfully manage to not just totally lose yourself in the midst of it, where we come out on the other side of this is incredible. I feel like that our sense of not only value, but our stability and our authority within the collective as a whole is going to become much more solidified, and we will become much more powerful and assured of our position. But it's okay. You can still feel like you want to just be yourself within, a group of people, and it's, it doesn't mean that you're not it doesn't mean that you're not gathering inspiration from, the quiet moments that you're connecting to everything around you or connecting to the collective. It's just that the opposition with these things is very tense. And if you feel like you want to just go out and party, and however you do that, right? Go and practice some level of social maturity by being yourself amongst other groups of people and being totally okay with that. That's okay. I don't see any reason why that's not okay. Now, except where the tension is going to be with these much larger, much slower moving, much more impactful planets. But at the same time, the tension that you're feeling with all of this is probably leading you to a really important conclusion. So, let's see here. Let's see. So we got the square to Uranus. And then the last one that we'll get into is the the moon is going to come into a quincunx with Mercury. Now, there are quite a few things going on in terms of there's quite a few things. The asteroid goddesses are very active right now, and we're going to get into that because they're making all kinds of connections to things. Black Moon Lilith right now has just moved into Cancer. Oh my, talk about making a decision and a point of no return. So we have to talk about her too in this process. So, but what this quincunx here, as the moon moves into this degree of Leo, you can see right here, Mercury is in a very important place right now because our minds are really working toward identifying what is essential and what has meaning and what has meaning at a group level and what really needs to be released, okay? And what's interesting here is that in this particular position in quincunx to the moon in Leo, what we're finding is that Mercury is in conjunction now within a degree to Vega. So strong, very strong Lyran activations with Mercury, which is not a very mercurial energy, right? Lyrans do. They get shit done. They are fearless. They are ambitious. They are independent. They full tilt into the experience of life. And so Mercury being there is not much of a doer. But what I will say is that Mercury does rule Virgo as well. So we can use our minds towards a process that has to do with goal-oriented. So, you know, the mind is just taking these things a lot more seriously and considering the full impact of our thoughts and our mindset on not just ourselves, but the whole. And specifically in this position is really thinking about, it's one thing that we want to actualize. There's a yearning soul experience that we're all having and we're feeling it, right? And as the moon moves through Leo, this gets stronger and stronger and stronger. You know, I just feel like I gotta be me, right? And I gotta make sure that everybody knows that I gotta be me. And again, this may not be very expressed, but it's going to be deeply felt with the moon. The quincunx to Mercury in conjunction with Vega is really our mental sphere being directed at, you know, what is for the greater good, and not specifically in the sense of like you don't have any say in any of this. This is kind of the whole point, is that it's a quincunx, right? These things at first don't seem like they're going to fit together. How do we transmute this so that we adjust ourselves in the face of two aspects that don't seem like they're going to fit together? I think that's a really important thing to consider by the end of today, is that we are really considering mentally what it is that taking care of future generations, right? It's not just about us, and it's certainly not just about the society that came before, but we have to actively be thinking about generations to come. And that's part of the process of Capricorn, is that it's not just about us. Our power comes from a collective participation. And part of that is that we make sure that we're not damaging the generations coming forward. This is the Lyran aspect. Just because they're ambitious and goal-oriented does not mean necessarily that they don't actually think about the bigger picture. And this is where Mercury is. He's really having us think very seriously about this. Now, the position of the moon at this point is where it gets pretty spectacular, right? It's like you know, a float in a parade moving down the street and everybody's cheering, right? This is how we're feeling. We're feeling that, but our minds are like, well, how are we going to make sure that we're not damaging the next you know what I mean? Damaging the next generations, that everybody's taken care of, that we are thinking like 7 generations ahead, that we are making sure that what we are doing collectively is helping and not hurting anybody that we are responsible for. While we may individually be like, woohoo, you know, here's the pageant going down the street, right? And this quincunx is actually happening. If we look over here at, let me look at the, here we go. If we go back over to this chart real quick, and so we can look at asteroid Juno, who is also in Pisces at the same degree. So at this point, Mercury has moved to 14 to 15. This is where Pallas Athena is, 14 to 15 of Pisces. And then the moon over here in Leo would be 14 to 15 degrees of Leo. So what is that? Then it's quincunxes to both. Quincunx to Capricorn, quincunx to Pisces, right? Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sign, 5 houses in between there, and the same on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, yes. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, correct. I had to make sure. I mean, I know that's what it is, but I want to make sure you see exactly why those things are both quincunxes, but they're in different locations. It's because on one side, there's 5 houses in between. The other side, there's 5 houses in between. So Pallas Athena is the goddess of strategy and wisdom, right? She's very masculine for a feminine sign or a feminine representation. Athena is the goddess of war, but she does so through strategy and the use of wisdom. And she's got, remember, her owl, Bubo, is with her. And so the strategy, the wisdom and the strategy that Pallas Athena in Pisces is really about the. Let's find it here. It's really about the need. It's the challenge to make the best of the situation when there's no immediate extrication. And this goes back again to what Emily said, like there's no getting out of it, right? So we have to make the best of the situation. And if you want to take it a little bit further, the Sabian symbol here is an officer instructing the troops before a simulated assault under a barrage of live shells, okay? It's the need for thorough rehearsing before any inherently dangerous social ritual. Now, what that actually means, I can't tell you, but what I can say here is that we're feeling very much in our feels what we want individually, who we want. We feel all, it's all about me, right? And that's what Leo is about. And that's not a negative, we all have this experience as we go along through our process of growth. So the quincunx first to Pallas Athena, but also Mercury at the same time is, we're feeling the pageant, right? The parade float going down the street and everybody's cheering. This just sense that celebration in some ways. And what's not fitting is these strategies and also too the mental realm that is way more focused on the collective and the collective experience, Capricorn and Pisces. And that we have to somehow find a way to adjust ourselves in relation to both of these things, because they also too, Mercury is in a sextile to Pallas Athena as a result of this. And that showing that it's really we're being led to really think and strategize when it comes to our the collective as a whole and how we're experiencing it, which of course makes it, it's not that far of a stretch to feel into what that means in terms of if we're feeling like it's all about me. And when you're feeling, part of it too is when you're feeling depressed or you're struggling with your own mental health or emotions or anything like that. I mean, the moon in Leo is certainly going to amplify that sense of like, it's got, I got to be me and it's all about me. And this is kind of a reality check. And not to say that we shouldn't think about ourselves at all, because that's completely counterintuitive. But we do have to adjust our expectations in relation to these other energies that are having us really focused and strategizing on the collective process as a whole. That we have to figure out how to transmute what otherwise is a very personal, individual, and egocentric focus into something that has to do with the larger social and collective context. And I think that that's totally fine. And not even just fine, I think that it's totally possible. And in fact, we're being set up with these transits are providing opportunities for that. So that's really important. So there's a couple of things here that need to be also brought to our attention. So Lilith is in direct opposition to the sun. because Lilith is now in Cancer. Black Moon Lilith is in Cancer, right? This is a point of no return. Now, if you are familiar with the story of Lilith, you know, a lot of different interpretations of why and what happened, and possibly some things that we don't even know about. I've heard some very interesting and compelling perspectives that if you're interested, I could share personally through DM or whatever, or we could start a chat in some other way, because it's just very interesting. So, but point of no return. So Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, or Lilith, right? She leaves the garden because she won't submit, and she not only leaves, but she's given the opportunity to come back, and she says no, right? And so 0 degrees Cancer, again, is where we plant our flag, right? It's the point of no return. We make a decision, and we are now very much rooted in that place. So regardless of what you think about this character, this does represent that moment of just like, nope, I'm not coming back. And in opposition to a sun in Capricorn, which is really, really having us kind of focused and expressing ourselves and finding sustainment through the larger collective political institutions. For instance, there is a deep primal part of us. This is why I am there's something very different right now about this December solstice with the sun in Capricorn. Something very, very different that I haven't experienced before. And with Lilith here in 0 degrees Cancer, directly opposite, there is a deep and primal urge, something that is deeper than even how we feel on the inside, something that is having to do with self-preservation and our insistence in being heard. And, you know, we may be putting a lot of our attention and, like I said, finding our voice and sustainment through taking power and finding our power through what we create together, right? That's what Capricorn is about, power. There's something so much deeper that is way more about being rooted to a core sense of self and integrity and character that Black Moon Lilith representing is just, there's something, and this I think is what is off. It is this Lilith, you know, pulling on normally what would be like much more of a celebratory or reverent type of experience. There's something very deeply rooted right here that wants to be heard, and there's no going back from it once it's expressed. And this is something we should really keep in mind as we move through today. You know, Lilith, the true Lilith, is going to be oscillating and moving quickly, so it's just a moment here where this happens. The sun also comes into a quincunx today. There's just so much happening right now. Like I said, the sun comes into a quincunx or another quincunx. There's a lot of adjustment that is on the menu today. So the sun at 2 degrees of Capricorn, like I said, in this quincunx with Rahu is this recognition. I don't know how to say this without sounding like doom and gloom. There's a sense here that we know that the other side, or the contrast to power, is that power can be used to overpower, or that power can be wasted through war. And the quincunx here is with the North Node, is a moment to really adjust our expectations of what we are remaining open to in our minds and in our own consciousness. Because even though we recognize, and I'm not suggesting this means we're going to war, or we should go to any type of war. I mean, we're in a war. We're in an information war. I mean, there's no doubt about it that, you know, it's our own conscious awareness that is the spoils of the war. And so it's like we already have called in what's coming. And our evolution collectively at a soul level is pulling us in a direction that is having us stay open to receive what is already coming. The quincunx is that there is an awareness of how damaging power can truly be when it is used. I don't want to say inappropriately, but there is damage and a waste of resources of the collective when it's used to keep power. I want to sit with this a little longer. Maybe there'll be something that comes up later with this quincunx. But our expectations of what is actually coming and how we're finding our sustainment, or at least our expression through this idea or concept, like identifying ourselves through the idea that war is not good for anything except destruction. But the thing is that, like I said, we've already called it in. And I'm not saying we called in the war. I'm saying that we've already called something in, and our soul's trajectory is pulling us in a direction right now, whether we like it or not, to receive that which we've already called in as a result of all of this time in Gemini. So this full moon, again, was really, really important to make sure that we let go of everything that is holding us back after the last 18 months of working in the realm of the mind and concepts and ideas, and there's just been so much back and forth, and part of that is realizing that they're two sides to the same coin, right? That's the thing about Gemini. And you eventually realize that, and you make your decision at 0 degrees Cancer. And Lilith will be heard. She will be heard whether we like it or not. She comes out whether we like it or not. She represents that part of ourselves that acknowledges where we really come from and who we belong to. And sometimes we make rash decisions that aren't in our best interests because we are so directly connected to this primal reality that we will or whatever, right? But we also, Lilith accepted the consequences of her actions, and that's part of the Cancerian element, is that you are planted there now. Your root system has stabilized you to the world, and this is where you're going to grow. And I think that when we are talking about all of this Capricorn energy that is been impacted by Pluto for so long, and this is not new. The sun comes back into Capricorn every year, but there's something very distinctly different. And of course it's because of the North Node. It's because Black Moon Lilith is in direct opposition at the solstice, and of course with Pluto in Capricorn and Venus here now, it's things are not what they seem. And I think we do have to adjust our expectations in the expression of what we give up when we continue to try to hold power, right? And I think this is an important realization. That's why it's the contrast to the first degree of Capricorn, so that we don't forget. But again, Rahu in the North Node, right? That for our discovery and exploration, we have to also be open to receive, whether we like it or not, what we embarked upon discovering or exploring. And it's going to be very difficult. For me personally, this is where some of the most struggle in terms of this quincunx building, right? I mean, it's building. This is not going to be exact till later today, but I can already feel it building up. And so what else here? No, I think that does it for the 22nd. So I know we just spent pretty much the whole time on this aspect. So maybe what we'll do here is look at the rest of the week, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the astrology report, the horoscopes out for the new moon, which is going to be on January 2nd. I'm going to start working on those, and I'm just going to start working on a number of projects, astrological projects and reports that have to do with the longer term. And so we will look at that, the longer period of the solstice. And of course, I have some offerings that are available for the solstice period to the equinox in terms of a reading. So I'm offering them at such a deep discount. Like a 30-minute reading is $44, and 60-minute reading, recorded reading 60 minutes is $77, and then I'm doing a full hour of Reiki plus a 30-minute intuitive reading along with that for, I don't remember what I said. I'll have to go. It's on social media. So, and I sent it out as an email. So if you're not on my email list, you can do that by going to the website, catalystenergies.net. And there's a splash page that allows you to sign up as soon as you get to the homepage. So we can just look at the rest of the week here. And I think that we can get some insight on how it's going to unfold. And then by Friday, I'll be more back on track. So the 23rd is a pretty mellow day in terms of transits. There are no major transits. It's just the moon transits as the moon is finishing up in Leo. And of course, it's going to be quincunxing, again, all of the Capricorn and Pisces energy, just like it's doing today. So there's going to be more opportunities to adjust ourselves in the face of Pluto and retrograde Venus, and of course, Neptune as well. And as the moon gets further along into Leo, the more intense it gets. And so I don't think it'll be mellow. I should retract that right now. But there aren't any major like planetary transits. It's just the moon transits and all of the quincunxes. So it'll be another day of just like, I gotta, like things are uncomfortable or these things aren't fitting together. And it's just going to be opportunity to really adjust ourselves, which I think is good. I think we need it because here comes Christmas Eve. If you celebrate Christmas, we kind of have no choice in the States, right? I mean, certainly people have different religious affiliations and practices, but we kind of are forced into celebrating Christmas. I have some thoughts about that, but what I will say here is this is the day that the square with Saturn and Uranus is exact on the 24th. And let's see what else we got here. The moon, before it moves out of Leo, is going to be in an opposition to Jupiter. Oh my gosh, Jupiter is going to be moving into Pisces very soon. Very, very soon, my friends. I can't wait. So this opposition with Leo and Jupiter in Aquarius on also Friday, very early in the morning, is going to be forming a T-square as well with the North Node. It's out of sign because it's still in Gemini, but still we're going to see this T-square based on this opposition. And, 30 degrees Leo is, an unsealed letter. And the 30 degrees of Aquarius is really just like waking up to the totality of consciousness. So this is going to be a really important moment where something is unsealed, I believe, within us and within our subconscious, within our feelings, maybe our dream state. And we're going to really want to shine, or it's going to be very potent and very strong. And Jupiter is, pulling us back into a state where our real resources and advocacy and representation and expansion, right? Larger than life expansion, strangely enough, because it's so singularly to a point here with Aquarius, is going to be the conscious totality of being. So we may find within ourselves here on this same day of this early in the morning on Friday, we may find that within us, something is being released, some sort of very potent truth is coming through us. And it could be could like burn us, you know what I mean? It could be like sunstroke or something, whereas Jupiter is like advocating and giving us all of the resources if we can embody not just that, but be engaged with the conscious totality of being. And again, the T-square with the nodes, it's showing again that it's really the trajectory of our soul's growth that is going to help release this tension, right? To stay open and waiting, right? Waiting for Santa to fill the stocking, right? Santa can only fill a stocking if we put a stocking out. And this is what we are being tasked with where the North Node or Rahu is right now. So let's see what else is going on. So that's the 24th. And then throughout the day, the moon moves into Virgo, thankfully. And we may get, we may be a little bit more meticulous, but at the same time, this is that opposition with Jupiter is going to be exactly, I think, what we need to start really being very disciplined about our emotions and our internal landscape. And I think we all need that a little bit. And so while the moon's moving through Leo right now, it's almost kind of like just let it move through you in some ways. Just let that part of yourself just infuse your own feelings in your internal landscape and maybe have a little bit of a tantrum. And that's okay. It's going to be when the moon moves into Virgo on Christmas Day, or the 25th, right? That we're going to start really taking this seriously and really take our emotional hygiene very seriously, because it'll be really very easy to feel like that you are expelling some really deeply held thing from within and not stay on point with the larger context. There's so much of that seems to be the theme right now, is that it's very easy to, number one, lose ourselves in the social context, because that's where everything is except for Chiron and Uranus and the North Node. But also, too, the opposite of that is that it's really easy to get caught up in how we feel about ourselves, our own ego, nature. And the dark side of Leo is narcissism and conceit. So with the moon there too, I mean, we can really just kind of get full of ourselves in that moment. And that's okay. Maybe it just needs to run its course, and then the moon comes into Virgo and you're like, okay, it's time to start taking some responsibility for my own energetic hygiene, so that I'm not just picking up on everything around me. I got the kitty here. And then we are going to, what else is happening on Christmas Day, which is Saturday. We'll see. And I'm going to, like I said, we'll do the weekly for all of these per sign. But again, I want to show you that Mars in conjunction with Antares, the heart of the Scorpion, in a trine to a now direct Chiron. If you remember, we had Mercury and we had the Sun specifically came and had that trine with Chiron, but it was retrograde. So now it is direct. And we have Mars, which normally rules Scorpio. And so even in the sign of Sagittarius, it is and in the constellation of Scorpio. And so right from the heart of the Scorpion, again, we're going to want to try to help people. I think that there might be a really strong battle to try to help people, almost to force it again, or somebody else trying to help us, right? Especially with all this family dynamic possibly going on and like where things are going right now. And again, this can really pull us off of our focus on our own growth, right? Pull us right back into our own. It's going to pull us right back into our own inner child, this trine. So if you're just aware of that, then you can kind of anticipate it and you can harness it for your own growth and just be the witness to it rather than letting it take over. Because I feel like that's a real possibility, because the heart of the Scorpion, even with Mars behind it as well, I mean, is very much like, let me assist you, and not in a way that is nurturing at all. It's very direct and impulsive and warrior like. I'm going to help you. In fact, I'm going to drag you up these stairs, even though you're just learning to walk right now. So again, and you may find that there's something that comes out in your awareness or in your experience that day that does that as a result of just an experience. It doesn't have to be people. So again, it could be very hurtful and very painful. So, but it also too could very much clear up some of this healing stuff, like immediately. We're talking about fire and purification. And the heart of the Scorpion, right? This is the sting. The sting is going to be very painful. And it, like I said, it's either going to pull us back into our inner child wounding and our trauma, or it's going to finally purify or be the homeopathy that we actually really need. But it's going to be very direct. and very fiery and possibly very aggressive, certainly very forceful with Mars involved. So, and then we have our third quarter square with the sun in Capricorn and the moon in Libra on the 26th on Sunday. And that's something that we will bring up for a different report. So, man, it's kind of all over the place, but it just felt like we needed to kind of go back and just, check in and see what was going on. So I'm going to leave it there for now, my friends. And, Malcolm wants to say hi here. So I'm going to, allow for that to happen. Maybe if my mouse wants to work. So I hope everyone is doing well and taking as good care of themselves as they can. Letting your feelings be your feelings. That's also important. Say hi, buddy. And say hi, Malcolm. Let your feelings be your feelings. It's okay. And remember, for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, this is actually the beginning of winter, right? It's the sun comes into Capricorn and we become sustained by the power of our institutions and the meaning that we have used to create actual physical material reality and the unfolding. So now it's unfolding. That's the experience of the sun going through Capricorn, is the unfolding of material reality. It's cardinal energy. It has momentum behind it. So this is where we find our sustainment is in the fortress of the material world that's created from human interaction or in just nature in general. But just remember that there's a reason that we need that, because we have to sustain ourselves through probably the most difficult part of the year, which is when the sun moves through Aquarius, which is at its detriment. And then through Pisces. I mean, it's one of the most difficult times a year is January to February because of how weak the sun is in these signs. And so right now, it's important that we realize we're going into a new season, that the light is shifting. We can acknowledge it, we can honor it, we can revere it, we can be just observant of it, but also to acknowledge that with the change in seasons comes change in a lot of other things too. So, oh my God, crazy cat. So, thank you for being here, my friends. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in more information, how to support this channel, or to get a personal reading, you can do so by just kind of hanging out at the end of this video, and you can get all that information. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. There's changes coming. I will be letting you know about them as they start to materialize in terms of the format and what I'm doing on these channels. So in the meantime, if you're not on social media or my email list, you can do that by everything's in the description box below that you need. So take care, everyone. I love you. God bless you. And I'll see you tomorrow. Okay? Bye.